Hello, welcome to Season 11 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. This season, in each episode, we will not both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about it later. We have 10 previous seasons of doing exactly that, and it's time for something new. This season, each episode will focus on a larger horror topic, trend, or maybe even rumor. We'll speculate about upcoming movies, debate genre definitions, and do our best to apply the perspective of two people who have watched way too many horror movies to different types of horror media. Thanks for coming along for the ride. When was the last time we did a live episode?
Christmas 2 years ago?
Yeah,
maybe?
I think it may have
3
been.
years ago?
Yeah, it's been too long.
We've played like 20 of them, though.
Yeah, the last several times we've hung out, we've been like, we should totally record an episode, and then we just did.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I think hanging out was more important.
Yeah, and also it tends to be around like holidays,
Yeah.
and we're like talking about holiday stuff and watching Home Alone, and like on St. Patrick's Day or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So yeah, we are here today together on the 4th of July, America's birthday.
Yep.
And we are recording an episode that I feel like has been 11 seasons in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Because for pretty much our whole friendship, as we previously discussed,
Mm-hmm.
Twilight Zone was a common interest.
Yeah.
A thing that we're super both into. You know, we will ask each other, like, have you seen this episode, or make recommendations. You got me the Twilight Zone complete series DVD set, which I treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just been kind of a thing for us. And Black Mirror, I feel like, is sort of the closest thing that we would get to, like, something that is like Twilight Zone, but made in the modern era.
Yeah. It's, but, I mean, even looking at Wikipedia here, it's based off of the Twilight Zone. Uses technology to comment on contemporary issues. So,
yeah.
Which we kind of noticed in our episodes we watched.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It feels very relevant in today's day and age.
Yeah.
But it was also cool to see, like, recognizable actors in it, which I feel like was probably the experience watching Twilight Zone back then, was you had a lot of, kind of up-and-comers and prominent people that were involved. So
yeah. The thing I noticed, though, was, so the thing with Twilight Zone, you would have, like, modern stars that would be on episodes. But, like, I always wondered, like, how much they got paid. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things I was reading about one of the episodes we watched was, like they used a lot of their budget for that episode because of the celebrities. Yeah. But it seemed like, for me, just, granted, this is, like, almost 60 years later. But it seemed to me that with the Twilight Zone, it was just, like, a thing that celebrities kind of did. It was, like, up-and-coming celebrities did it, but also established celebrities were on there, and they weren't getting paid billions of dollars. So.
Yeah, it was like good for the brand.
Yeah,
almost like it was a well-regarded series. Being involved with it was a good career move.
That's what it seemed like.
But yeah, like you said, Black Mirror I've been wildly fascinated with for a while, and it, as you mentioned, it tends to have a heavy technology focus, which I think makes it feel very relevant to now. Because I feel like right now we're starting to see a bunch of trends. That as people are more online, as smartphones are a bigger part, like data connectedness all day, every day, is a thing that's shaping our society. It seems like Black Mirror is taking a lot of the trends that we've seen or things that we're very familiar with, but then is projecting them to like their logical conclusion. So it's like the concept of like, okay, well, Instagram is a really big thing, and the way that people interact on Instagram is a really big thing. So what if we like fast forward that 20 years and it continues growing at the same pace? Yeah. What might that look like? And so it's like creepy, but it's also like hard to talk yourself out of most of the stuff that comes up on it.
Yeah, I think that, so should we say the episodes we watched?
Yeah, definitely. So we picked 2 episodes, and we did the first 2 episodes of season 3, which I feel like is when the series really hit its stride. And so the first one is called Nosedive. And that's the one that I think the most people remember the most vividly from the series. Like, if you ask somebody if they've seen Black Mirror, they will almost always refer to this episode.
Yeah.
The second one was called Playtest, and I have never heard anyone else who remembers it or wants to talk to me about it, but I actually prefer it of the two.
Yeah.
But these, I feel like, are kind of two examples of just like peak Black Mirror.
Yeah.
And so I thought, as an introduction to the series for you, that would be a place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hadn't seen this before, but also, I mean, I knew like the technology kind of piece just from, I think if there was like a Miley Cyrus episode or something that, I don't know. Anyway, but you talk about like hitting the nail on the head. Like for season 3, it was saying here that the trailer was released in October 2016. So not too long ago, but still long enough ago for them to accurately predict the future. I feel like talking about with the nosedive, the nosedive episode.
It almost feels like we're even further down the path that it projected, 100%. Which was a little creepy.
It's weird.
Yeah, because at the time I was like, I could totally see this happening. Yeah. And going back and rewatching it now, I'm like, this is kind of totally happening.
Right. So, well, I feel like when you get to the point of like, you know, my mother-in-law having like Instagram, like it's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's still like strange to me. Like for some reason, I still think like social media is like a thing that, you know, like with Facebook, how you had to be in college first. You know, I still think of it like that, but it's getting to the point where nosedive is just ridiculously accurate.
Yeah, because I mean, all of that stuff is like permeated all of society at this point. It's no longer like a demographic that's active there.
Yeah. Which it was strange too with nosedive. One of the things I felt like with the episode was it was almost, even though there was all this technology involved, what they were doing, electric cars and you know, smartphones that instant access to rate someone, it seemed like more of a wasteland than like an actual, like, you know, we were watching Mad Max 2. Yeah. Like that's what that is. But it almost seemed like it was the case. Like it was just, it seemed like the society in the episode was just ridiculously like hollow, you know, and barren, you know, and just this weird like landscape where you don't want to mess with the like the dictator, which would be the social media or, you know, fame or whatever in this case. You don't want to mess with them because if you do, then you don't get your discounts on car rentals and stuff like that. And,
Yeah, well, and that's one thing that really stood out to me is it seemed like it very much went down the path, and I didn't remember this from the first time, of like society splitting off. Like the income inequality and stuff was like a huge part of it. But the idea of like the social score and things playing into that and reinforcing that as well was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But like you said, the shallowness of it, just the idea of, you know, how so many people go so far to like portray the online version of themselves or like the way they want to be perceived and like how different that can be from reality is really, it was a pretty stark contrast.
Well, and I thought it was super interesting too, because like, so I rewatched the episodes this morning, got up super early.
Overachiever.
To grill some food or smoke some foods. And one of the things I saw on Reddit before I watched Nosedive episode was like, I think it was titled like Influencers at a Dinner, and it's this person's filming a big long table with all this nice food on the table, and they pan up and go to the left, and they're like taking pictures with the food, like the food's getting cold basically, and like they were more concerned with getting pictures of the food without like actually enjoying the food. Yeah, and you're like, that's exactly what this is about. Yeah. This is like precise.
Yes.
And that was the first time I seen the video on Reddit, but I was like, man, this is creepy. Yeah. How accurate these things are.
Well, and one thing that's come up a lot with us is like people keep telling Sarah and I that we don't take enough pictures. Yeah. And that's just weird because the idea is that like
boring.
Your dog's give me the old
like we've had it.
Just wrap it up. Yeah. But we get told that, but like the average, like the baseline right now is so high for the number of pictures that people are expected to take. It almost as if like, you know, the experience doesn't count unless you're documenting it via pictures on your phone and posting it somewhere. And I'm kind of resistant to that. Yeah. Which is why I will be like the truck driver from this episode. Yeah. Soon. Because I swear way too much for polite society. Yeah. Don't give an F. Yeah. See, I'm cleaning it up. About, you know, people liking my pics and stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I think that there are healthy ways to do it, but a lot of people don't do it in a healthy way.
Well, I feel like when it's encroaches on your vacation time, like for us, when we went to, Katie and I went to Oklahoma City for a quick getaway last weekend, and it was one of those where I just wanted to like relax, even though it was only a couple hours away. It was just like, I just want to relax. Like, I just want to like not, I took a picture, Katie and I took some pictures of each other. She took more than I did of her food and stuff because she wanted to remember the experience. Yeah. She also scrapbooks. And she puts it. But still, it was like, for me, I was like, I don't want it on. I don't think I got on social media at all the whole trip, and it was nice. Not even Reddit. Yeah.
Well, and part of it too is with us growing up in like a very small church in a very small town in Oklahoma. I feel like we spent enough of our time with everyone else being in our business.
Yeah.
So it's
that's true.
Kind of like not a thing I want to invite more of. But
And plus, like, I feel like maybe as homeowners, you don't really want to announce that you're away from your house. Kind of thing. Right.
But anyway, so this episode, season 3, episode 1, probably the most like quintessential Black Mirror episode, stars Bryce Dallas Howard, who is a national treasure, and she is sort of the center of this story, and it's about a woman who is living in this sort of dystopian social media fueled future, and she needs her lease is ending. She needs to get a new place. She has to have a certain social score to get the place that she wants. She sees that as being the thing that will sort of elevate her status in life. She's a very lonely person. Reconnects with an old friend via, the Instagram knockoff that is at the center of the story, and gets invited to be in her wedding, and then proceeds to have all the worst luck in the world, and along the way does not handle it well. Her score gets lowered and lowered until finally she makes her way to the wedding, but she's been uninvited at this point, and she basically just loses her mind and crashes it. Yeah. And just the downward spiral is so uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
And I loved a lot of like the directing of this. And there was one scene where like she's practicing her speech as the maid of honor for the wedding, and it's so fake. Like, you can tell it's so calculated.
Incredibly fake.
And then as she's doing it, a tear just, like, rolls down her cheek, because she wants it so bad, and that she is so lonely and just so desperate for any type of improvement in life.
Yeah.
And sees this as the thing. But it was like, in that moment, it felt super raw. And then she's just like, okay, so was the tear too much? Just totally out of it. And I thought the acting and the directing of this episode really are a big part of what made it memorable, beyond like a super engaging concept.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, like, yet again, it was almost like going back to the wasteland. Like, even as far as like, seemed like all her connections, even, with her brother, seemed pretty hollow.
Oh, big time.
And the whole universe that she was in seemed pretty hollow, and I think that's just like ultimately what you do have with social media, where you have these kids on that are showing like they got Lamborghinis and stuff, but it's just rentals, like it's just all show. And that's what you notice in there. So you have fakeness. So like when she's runs into the lady in the elevator going up to work, like it's just like constant fake conversations, and even when she takes a bite of a cookie that she got for free, she immediately spit it out, and it's like, did it taste disgusting, or was she just trying to watch what she ate? It's just like they were taking these pictures that they would post, like, and you would see on Instagram, for example, of like, here's my coffee and cookie for breakfast, and then like both of them she spit out or thought was disgusting. It's just strange.
The whole like just projection of life versus the reality and stuff.
But her crashing the wedding wasn't as good as the birthday. I think it was birthday crash in Parasite.
Oh yeah, no, sure.
I was kind of hoping we were going to go that way when she pulled the knife out.
Right. Yeah.
It had like the Raggedy Ann doll. She's like, oh, I was really hoping we did that way, but
yeah. This one definitely leaned more into psychological, not like gore or slasher. But another scene that I really liked was just her talking to the truck driver, and they just. It was like, for the whole episode up until that point, it was like you were living in this weird, just kind of fake plastic world where no one was honest with each other, and there was always like this subtext, but no one wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then they were just having like a super real conversation, and that was such a contrast to the rest of it. And then at the wedding, before she got there, when everyone was just like immediately giving their likes away to like in real time.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like, that's exactly what happens now. They just do it after the fact once the pictures are posted.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, okay, we'll do it a few hours earlier or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of like taking that whole thing in through the screen
Yeah.
and not even like really being aware until all of a sudden a person shows up and like disrupts the plan. And then everyone like can't look away. And it's like, oh, real life is happening now.
Yeah. Well, see, that's something that I struggle with. Like when we do go to like concerts and stuff, it's like, man, I'd really love to have this song filmed so I can remember it. But I feel like I won't be in the moment if I film it, but then I'll forget it, you know? Yeah. So it's just this weird, you know, usually that's where Katie comes into play. I'm like, hey, Kate, get your phone out. Record this. Let me be in the moment.
Yeah. So
it was a good episode. I was pretty stoked on it.
Yeah. And then at the end, she's in jail like in the cell across from the other guy.
Yeah.
And they just start insulting each other.
Yeah.
And they
kind of smile.
And they just have the biggest smiles, and the music's like happy, and that's like a happy ending.
Because they can actually say
they
what
can finally be real, you know. And so that, I thought it was a good episode. I thought it was really thought-provoking. I wouldn't say that this really registers like on the horror scale much at all, other than just, you know, sort of dystopian.
Idea
this is what the future is becoming.
I think the idea of that's pretty terrifying. Because like you could definitely see that's how things could go.
Yeah. Very satirical, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even on Instagram, like I feel like on Motorcycle, where you can buy like for $100 you can get a spot, and they pick out a winner. I've only ever seen the winners be people who had like a lot of likes, like their pages, and it's like, okay, this is pretty. That's all I've ever seen, but
pretty
it's like
convenient.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So yeah, once again, just wanted to reach out.
Twitter's
she does not like this.
I know.
Just want to reach out and remind everybody to like us on the social.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was season 3, episode 1, Nosedive. I think that's one of the, you know, if you want to give Black Mirror a try, that's a great place to start.
If you want to nosedive into it.
Oh.
Also, you could tell that we're the exact opposite because we don't do our social media. You didn't even know we had Instagram for a long time.
I know, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Neither does anyone else.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true.
But what I'm most excited to talk about with you is season 3, episode 2.
Yep.
Which is called Playtest.
Playtest.
And this one is one of the best pieces of horror television that I think has been created in years. And I feel like it is a pretty good match of what both of us like from horror. Yeah. And so I'm curious to see like what your take is on it.
Whoa. Yeah.
So
I didn't realize that was Kurt Russell's son.
Oh, I didn't either, actually.
Yeah. That's crazy. So Wyatt Russell is the main actor in this film, and that's played by Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's kid.
Oh, okay.
Which makes sense because, like, when I was looking at his filmography, and I saw it I saw Overboard. I just watched that the other 2 days ago. I was like, how the hell? Ooh.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've definitely seen him in other stuff, but I didn't look up who it was. Yeah, I guess super high level overview on this one.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's on a backpacking tour across the world. It's after his dad has lost a long fight with Alzheimer's, and he was there for like all of it, and now he's sort of estranged from his mom, and he's off trying to find himself. Ends up in England. It's the end of the trip, but his credit card gets stolen and locked, so he has no access to money, so he's trying to find like odd jobs to do to make some money to get back home. Ends up signing up to be like a beta tester for a progressive horror video game creator.
Yep.
And that's sort of the setup at the beginning, and it goes from there. And just general takeaways from this episode. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I think my kind of takeaway from this is like, how much effort do we want to put into VR? You know, like
it scared you off of it completely.
Yeah. Now, granted, like when it comes to VR, I'm sure like my son, it's going to be a different story, like in, 10 years or 15 years when they're really into video games, but, I'll be the old man that's like, why are we playing VR? I can definitely see, like, that's, I think, been kind of like the constant thought with virtual reality, where virtual reality is going to become better than actual reality. Now, granted, with this being a horror video game, that's a different story.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me with this one was kind of the speech when he was talking to the video game, like the head of the company, and he was talking about how horror is a release of fear, and how afterwards you feel thankful to be alive, and that makes you feel good. And I'm just like, oh yeah, just like why we like horror movies. It's like that the thing that makes it so effective is because you get to experience it and then like experience life after without having any like real danger. So that was kind of a neat explanation, I thought.
Which is definitely foreshadowing.
Oh, for sure.
Which is
right.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was intense because like you could see like when he was testing out, like so when this guy who's doing the backpacking trip,
yes,
and he shows up and the first thing they have him do is like a whack-a-mole thing, and like he's legit like excited to do it.
Yeah,
and it just seems like he's so happy and excited. And then they're like, okay, well, here's the full thing. Here's the full game, which is just like terrifying in itself of like, I think for me, it's more terrifying to be in this situation because like theoretically, if it's VR to what we know, you could just take the goggles off, you're done.
Right.
But this was like implanted in him.
Right. Yeah.
There's no bailing. If you're at a haunted house and you're like, oh, this is scary, I should get out of here, you could just leave. With this, it's like, nope, you gotta get this little mushroom thing out from your neck, and terrifying.
Yeah, and the whole idea of like the AI will use your own brain to create a uniquely terrifying experience just for you.
Yeah,
I am out at that point.
Yeah.
Like midway through that sentence, I was like, nah, not for me.
Yeah, because I was sitting there thinking like, okay, well, I could hide like my fear of heights because I'm petrified of heights.
Yeah.
When we were in Oklahoma City, we ate at a restaurant called Vast, and it was like on the 49th floor, and like I was shaking, my knees were shaking in the elevator. It was terrifying. So mine would just be like no haunted house; it would just be me really high up, like on some wire or something. Like that's my
And I thought it was kind of cool when he saw the spider, and they were doing the kind of like classic horror film technique that is a thing I think we both like, where you have like the normal movie, but then it cuts to like a surveillance camera footage of the same scene.
Right, yeah.
And they were doing cool stuff here where it was like showing what he was seeing versus what was like actually happening. And so like the spider wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And so the woman on the other end who was like talking to him as he was going through this experience was saying that the AI has worked out that he's an arachnophobe pretty quickly and that it's probing for weak spots. And so that was just kind of a neat idea of like, okay, it's kind of feeling out what's going to be effective and what's not. It's learning along the way. And it started with something that was pretty not like life-threatening, but also that just sort of like set the stage for what was to come or what could happen.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of unnerving in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the most terrifying of this whole ordeal is just like, because it's your brain, and I think your brain hides certain things of like, I'm not going to sit here and think about my phobias because I'll just be scared all the time, but this is not going to allow you to not do that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like a lot of times, too, I tend to have dreams that are like deeply psychologically disturbing.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've done this on light mode already, so like I don't need like the souped up version, but just from like a horror perspective, I thought this one did a lot of things really well. And I think it was a little more sold out and meant to be scary than the other episode we talked about. And one of my favorite scenes was when he has the cabinet open and he's like, okay, he's going to be right there when I close this, right? That's how this works. And then he closes the cabinet and you see the guy's shadow on the wall behind it. And you're just like, okay, cool. Yeah, I know what they're doing here. But then like the giant spider with his head comes, flying around the corner. And it was like they called their shot, and then they still got you with a jump scare.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm just like, bravo. Like,
well
done.
You did good on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the deal with him being able to feel, like, he wasn't, well, granted, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't what it, like, so, do you want to talk about the ending real quick? Or?
Yeah, so the big takeaway was that it did like a double Kansas City shuffle on you, where he like wakes up, they get him out and they're like, oh wow, the thing ran away. It was, maybe you're super susceptible or whatever. And then, he gets away from it. It's like deeply reflective and he's like thinking back on, everything that he's been through and all this. And there's like a couple of layers of you thinking that he's out of it and him thinking that he's out of it. But then at the very end, you find out that he actually died during the initial thing with the whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And that it was only like seconds that he was actually in the simulation. But the AI had worked out and been so powerful that it took him through like the whole arc of the show. And he had all of those completely horrifying experiences in just a fraction of the amount of time passing on the outside world.
Yeah.
You walked away from it just feeling like, whoa.
Yeah, you're like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think when you realize, like, or I guess when, you find out that it wasn't the case that he was just passed out, or that he had died because of the phone call, the malfunction because of the phone call. First off, that's why I immediately blocked my mom. I know she would probably do that. She would do it on purpose, I think.
Your mom can never call you again.
Yeah. So she's done. She's not in my life anymore. Mm-hmm. But I think that was also like the terrifying part, because like he could feel him. He could feel the cut that came through. So he gets stabbed in the episode, and he's like, I could feel it. Like he's freaking out, and it's like, no, he has a very valid point. Like before, you don't know that he's dead right at that moment, so you're like, no, that's a very valid point. You should not be feeling that. You could definitely feel it. Yeah. There's something wrong. And it makes it kind of seem like this company is like the bad guys throughout the whole, whole, you're trying to figure out what sneaky thing they did or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the case. Like it was just, he died and.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of escalated to the point where it felt like it was getting a lot more personal.
Yeah.
Because it started off with the girl who he had hooked up with before shows up, and it's like she's there to rescue him.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this has to be part of the simulation. Here's some things you're saying that don't make sense. And then finally she's like, well, don't you know it was me that got you this gig in the first place? I stole your credit card. Yeah. And then she attacks him. I mean, just all out, savagely attacks him, and he has to fight her. And then he ends up getting stabbed, and then he stabs her, and it's like completely brutal. But then they still won't let him out, and then he thinks that he's woken up from all that, and they're like apologizing to him, and then he goes home to see his mom. And then, before that, he's having the experience that they've wiped his memory, which is like his biggest fear after watching his dad have Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So then when he wakes up from that, he's like super traumatized, and then like leaves and goes home, and it's like kind of the sad montage as he's like rethinking his life. And then he gets home and finds that his mom has Alzheimer's and doesn't recognize him. But then that was yet another part of the simulation where it had let him have the first experience, then let him think he got out of the simulation, and then put him into an even darker timeline. And it's just like, good God.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying, terrifying moment. So I was pretty happy with this.
It was an intense episode.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah. And so this one I watch in my living room by myself after dark while Sarah was out of town. Mm. And it affected me a lot more than I expected it to, for something that like I'd seen before and knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. I definitely. It was one of those where like I watched while watching the first episode. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is definitely something I could see myself watching.
Yeah.
And in fact, today when we watched it, or when I started watching it this morning, I watched it before Katie and my kid got up, and so when they got up, they started watching part of this episode, and Katie was pretty like engrossed in it seems. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure this will be the next show we start watching.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, did you watch any other episodes yet?
No.
Okay.
Because I figured
I'd
be watching them with Katie, and I don't like rewatching episodes.
So this one, watching these two really got me back into the series, because we haven't watched them since they were new. And I went back and rewatched some, and it reminded me that it is very much like Twilight Zone in that like not every episode is a super iconic thing that will be in your mind forever, right? Like it's not a perfect series by any means, and some are a little slower than others. But there are a lot of good ones, and there are some that I had totally forgotten about that were still like really good, still held up really well. But I did kind of want to warn you, there is another episode from season 3 called Shut Up and Dance.
That's the next episode.
Yeah. The first time I watched it, it actually made me like physically sick to my stomach at the end.
Really?
So I don't ever want to watch it again. But it's also like, it's a very impactful episode.
Yeah.
And it's very good in like a disturbing way. Like the whole progression of it and everything and the way they pull it off. You're just like, wow. But that's the other episode that like out of all of these, other than Nosedive, that is the one that I remember the most clearly all these years later.
What's funny is on their Wikipedia, it literally says this episode is a dark thriller. So
yeah.
Seems like it's going to be a little intense. Yeah.
So, yeah, overall, I mean, I think it's a really well done and really interesting series. It's totally worth checking out if you haven't. I think that, much like we discussed, is the Twilight Zone horror. I would say Black Mirror is not always sold out horror.
Yeah.
But I think that it is very much borrowing from horror tradition and doing a lot of interesting things. And some of the episodes do, like, super embrace the horror experience.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll definitely watch it again. I mean, honestly, it could just feel like a color, even if it makes you feel like it's a color version of Twilight Zone. Like, I'm in,
right.
like, I know that it won't make up for the originals, or it won't be as good as the originals as some people would think, but still, at least we get more episodes. Might as well go for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's been nice recording in person.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we're recording on the floor of my son's room because our wives just got home and interrupted. So if the volume's off on this one, I blame the person who edits the episode, which I touched those first. So nice.
You win this round. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.